In chapter 1150 of the One Piece manga, Oda dropped a mind-blowing reveal about Imu-sama's abilities. For the first time, we see her wielding a mysterious book that unleashes devastating weapons. The scene is drenched in suspense and awe, leaving fans reeling with questions. What is this book? Where did it come from? And more importantly, what inspired Oda to create such an ominous artifact? One of the most compelling theories points directly to the grimoire, a legendary magical book from European folklore believed to contain forbidden spells, demonic pacts, and elemental control. The similarities are hard to ignore. Both books grant their user godlike powers and dominion over destruction itself. It's almost as if Oda drew inspiration from the mythos of the grimoire to give Imu a distinctly Western mythological aura, a terrifying presence cloaked in ancient magic. But what if I told you, this mysterious book isn't just some magical relic? What if it's actually the national treasure of Mariejois that Doflamingo hinted at years ago? Sounds far-fetched. Not really. In fact, this theory has been gaining traction, especially among fans who revisited Doflamingo's cryptic words. He said that whoever possesses this treasure could rule the world, and if that treasure is a book that can summon weapons, create wealth, or even forge unholy contracts, then everything starts to make chilling sense. Assuming the book is indeed inspired by a grimoire, it wouldn't be surprising if it allows Imu to do the impossible, summon divine weapons, accumulate treasure, control minds, and even grant supernatural powers to her followers. Powers so terrifying they could shift the entire balance of the world. But here's the kicker. Power always comes at a price. Every time Imu uses the book, it feeds on her lifespan. That's right. To delay the cost, Imu strikes dark contracts with others, offering them power in exchange for their years of life. And through this twisted deal, she extends her own lifespan indefinitely. Now think about this. Remember how Doflamingo wanted eternal youth? It's not just a vanity thing. He understood that to make use of the national treasure, one would need to live for centuries. And this brings us to the core of Imu's immortality. I still believe her eternal youth comes from a surgical operation, one that freezes aging, but her true immortality, that comes from harvesting the lives of others. Without eternal youth, even if she lived for hundreds of years, her body would age and wither. Time alone doesn't prevent decay, but with both stolen lifespans and unaging flesh, she becomes truly eternal. She won't die. Not until she burns through every last second of life she's taken from others. And I believe Imu's ability to control people against their will may explain what truly happened to King Harold, and the dark secret that has haunted Elbaf for the past 14 years. The most likely scenario is that Harold had fallen under Imu's influence. A puppet ruler used to bring the mighty Elbaf under the world government's thumb. Faced with this cruel reality, Loki had no choice but to end his own father's life to break the spell and free his people. In doing so, he chose silence. Not out of shame, but out of respect. He buried the truth along with his father's honor, carrying the blame alone to preserve his family's dignity. And perhaps Jarul shared that burden too. If his silence wasn't caused by memory loss, then it was surely a choice, made to protect Harold's legacy and honor Loki's painful decision. But Loki's ability to strike down his father hints at something far more significant. He likely holds the key to countering Imu's regenerative power. Just like Skopper Gaban, who managed to temporarily suppress Summer's regeneration, Loki demonstrated the rare ability to overcome what should be an impossible defense. The only difference? Gaban hesitated, distracted by his duty to save the children, and missed the one chance he had to finish it. Now, circling back to Imu's control over others, I'm convinced there's one group who can resist it, the D-Clan. That's why their will has been glorified throughout history. When speaking to Cobra, Imu referred to the remaining D as nothing but empty shells, a bitter insult that reveals how little he thinks of them, because they don't understand the true meaning of their inherited will. It reminds me of the Ackermans from Attack on Titan, a bloodline immune to the founding Titan's influence. The D-Clan may carry a similar trait, a built-in resistance to Imu's mind-bending dominion. And speaking of pacts and control, let's talk about demonic contracts. I'm beginning to think Oda may have drawn inspiration from the classic Faust legend. In this old tale, Faust was a man driven by greed, hungry for forbidden knowledge and power. Eventually, he summoned a demon and made a pact. In exchange for his soul, he would receive unimaginable wisdom, wealth, and influence. In some versions of the story, the devil even splits Faust's lifespan in two, claiming one half now and the rest when death comes knocking. Once the deal was sealed, Faust became more than a man, a figure cloaked in fear, power, and inevitability. Sound familiar? That might just be the dark heart of Imu's secret. Contracts signed in blood, lifespan stolen like currency, and a throne built on the backs of those who dared to wish for more. And now imagine this. What if something like this had happened to Imu 800 years ago? If Imu was not a demon from the beginning, but rather a human like any other, then I believe he must have forged a dark pact, a contract with a devil in pursuit of overwhelming power, and the monstrous, almost demonic form we now associate with him is nothing more than a consequence of that deal. A curse bound to his flesh, allowing the demon to inhabit his body in exchange for the catastrophic abilities he now commands. Just as Imu can summon powers at will from his mysterious book, we saw him unleash a devastating attack through a magical circle conjured by his spear. This idea traces its origins to what's known in ancient lore as the Grimoire, a forbidden book of spells. According to these old grimoires, the pentagram grants its wielder control over the 5 fundamental elements: earth, fire, water, air, and spirit. Mastery over these forces allows one to summon and weaponize them, delivering powerful, devastating blows at will. Now, as for Dori and Brogy, their fate remains uncertain. It's possible we'll later discover that Nika possesses an ability that directly counters Imu's control, making the term liberator more literal than symbolic. If this is true, then Luffy could potentially break Imu's grip and free those enslaved by his influence. But if such a power doesn't exist, Dori and Brogy may remain bound until Imu himself is brought down, especially considering that Imu entrusted them with ruling Elbaf, a sign that his control over them is anything but temporary. Yet, if Luffy hardens his heart, their fate may echo that of Harold, slain not out of hatred but necessity, unless of course he chooses to spare them until the final confrontation with Imu arrives. And now, with Imu successfully establishing his own private army within Elbaf, and with the Holy Knight's mission completed swiftly, we stand at a critical juncture with 2 possible outcomes. First, Imu may return to Mariejois alongside the Holy Knights. After all, he cannot afford to remain in Elbaf while the Holy Land is under siege. If this happens, Dori, Brogy, and the giant army will be left behind, becoming the Straw Hat's next major obstacle. Second, Imu may choose to stay in Elbaf a little longer, monitoring the situation closely. In this case, Luffy might end up confronting him directly, and if that happens, we could see an epic battle where Loki fights alongside Luffy, a symbolic alliance of will and legacy. Zoro and Sanji could take on Dori and Brogy, while the rest of the crew, along with Elbaf's remaining allies, face off against the newly assembled giant army. Whatever path the story takes, one thing is clear: the war is no longer coming, it's already begun. And in the shadow of ancient pacts and demonic power, Imu has risen to rule not just through force, but through control of the very will of men. From Harold's tragic end to the fall of Elbaf's giants, the echoes of his darkness reach far and wide. Yet, in this looming storm, a spark remains: the will of D. If Luffy truly is the liberator foretold, then the final war will not just be a battle of strength, but a clash of destinies, and the fate of the world will hang in the balance.